Hi, I'm Tricia Morris at Club Scrap. This is the Easy 8 album project. I'm so excited about sharing this little work of art with you. It's a complete album made with a few basic bookbinding supplies and one Club Scrap page kit. And the joy of this is that you can substitute any Club Scrap page kit with what we've used and make an album custom to your own desires. We thought this theme would be really fun and versatile for any kind of trip you have planned or you've taken in the past. I finished my pages with photographs from a trip to Mexico. So whatever your heart desires as far as the exterior and interior of the album, that's completely up to you, but I'm going to show you how to assemble this one, including the cover and all the inside pages. Let's get started. So to prepare, we're going to begin with the Club Scrap guillotine trimmer. This is my favorite equipment in my craft studio. I can't imagine doing any of my projects without it. So if you don't have something, this exact model or something very similar to it, I suggest you go hunt one of these down. And I'm also using my pocket organizer, and being organized in a project of this scale is so important. So this organizer is something I call an accordion pocket file. I have a video and a starter kit to help you make one for yourself. And the lip on the front of the organizer is what helps, and I added some hook and loop dots here, and that's what stays underneath the base of the trimmer to hold the organizer vertically so that I can use my plentiful vertical space to stay organized. So here's the lay of the land. We're going to be placing everything needed for the inside scrapbook pages of our book in pairs of 2. So layouts 1 and 2 will go in pocket, labeled 1 and 2, and so on. Then we're also going to have another pile for our project pieces that we're about to trim and prepare, as well as another pile for our bonus pages that we can make because of the way I designed this particular collection. So if you're using the Under the Sea, you can follow everything I do exactly. Now I'm going to set aside the boards and the page protectors. I've got the instructions here, and I've got my page kit. So if you're working with a different Club Scrap page kit, you still need to remove all of the papers from the package, okay? And then if you're substituting as well, you need to decide what paper will substitute with what, so 1 for 1. So I recommend in advance, if you're substituting, to go through and just substitute like the aqua that I've listed in the instructions for a color that you have on hand, okay? So that substitution plan can happen right at the beginning. And I'm going to go ahead though and do what I normally do, which is to organize the paper in the order we'll use it. So I'm going to fan this kind of out a little bit, this little stack, and sort of hold it in the crook of my arm so I can see everything clearly. And the 2 aqua papers that I need are right here. So there's a aqua metallic and an aqua, so make sure you grab the aqua color, and I'll place that on my trimmer base. Then I'm looking for a sea green. That's going to be this sort of golden color here, this sea green. We'll grab 2 of those. Next, I'll take 1 whale print, so you can see the whale right here on this beautiful print from the Under the Sea collection. 1 octopus print, that's this one with the octopus in the corner. I'm putting those face down. I'll grab the next octopus print and the other whale print. As you can see, we're trimming everything here. Then we have this deep blue color. This is a laid finish, and I think it's pretty consistent on both sides of the paper. And then both aqua metallics. And then we have the Cutaparts. Now this is the twist. So this will be unique. These Cutaparts and the size pieces they get trimmed to will be different in every collection. So that's where you're going to be needing to adapt a little bit if you're substituting with another kit. So the first one we'll trim together is the one that says A Whale of a Good Time. And the other one has this like strip on the edge of the jellyfish on this side. Again, I'm putting those down on my work surface face down, and then let's take the entire stack and flip it back over so those first 2 aqua papers are right on the top. Okay, now we're going to do some trimming. So both of the aqua papers get trimmed at the same time, but we have to confirm that we're cooperating with the correct direction of the grain of our paper. And if you look in the instructions, you'll see an arrow pointing top to bottom here. That indicates the way the paper should dip easily when you hold it by an edge. So here I'm going to hold this, and boy, that's pretty droopy right there. I'm not sure if you can see, but very, very flexible. This is a little more stiff, so I want the paper dipping top to bottom. Same on this one, so I'm going to rotate it like this. And now both aqua papers are in the trimmer the same grain way, and we're going to trim them both at 11 inches. Now to do that, if you're new to the trimmer, just make sure that you're level at the top guide, that you're using inches, not centimeters. I'm going to find 11. So the paper is nice and square, rested here. I'm going to push down on the clear bar while I trim. And then I'm going to take this whole entire sheet and rotate it so it's now facing the other way, and we will cut at 10.5. This is going to end up being the outside cover of my book. So that actually goes in a separate pile on our work surface. So I'll set that aside. Then I have these two longer skinny pieces. They're 11 inches long right now. And I'm going to put one in pocket 3 and 4 and the other in 5 and 6. And again, those are the layouts or the pages that those are used on. This next strip, I'm going to place it in my trimmer and cut it at 11 inches. Now, if it's hard to kind of tell where the 11 is when you're way up here on the top edge, just bring it down to the ruler marking there and make sure the paper is level and resting along the bottom edge of the inch markings and cut at 11. And then take one strip and put it in pocket 1 and 2, and the other goes in 5 and 6. So again, we're doing all the trimming for both the cover itself and the inside pages. This is your scrap. So you can go ahead and get rid of those. Now we're moving on to the sea green, same thing. Each paper needs to have the grain dipping top to bottom. So let me just check these again. That's pretty stiff. This is nice and flexible. And even if I'm working with papers of the same color, I do it for each individual sheet one at a time to make sure I have that correct. Once again, we're going to cut at 11, so we're going to get some practice at that measurement way over here. Make sure you press down on the clear bar, especially because we're using 2 sheets of paper. And now I'm going to rotate and cut at 8.5. Now both of these 8.5 by 11s are going to go in pocket 5 and 6. And then you have these 2 larger pieces. This goes on the pile for the project. This is going to become the outside spine cover of our book. Then we have the narrow strips. And once again, we're going to trim these horizontally at 11. So I'll go to my lower mark here so I can see better. Make sure I stabilize. And take one strip, put it in pocket 1 and 2. And again, if you don't have the accordion pocket file, have piles, of course, for each of these as well. This other strip goes in 7 and 8. And here again is a little scrap. We could probably find a home for it though, if we looked hard enough. All right, now I'm turning to page 2 of my instructions, and I'll take the whale print. Just to keep in mind, if you're substituting that this, whatever image you have, I'm gonna put it so it's horizontal to the left, to the side, okay, because this is going to be the inside cover of my book. I'm going to trim this one at 8 3/4. So be mindful that every column on the trimmer base is 1/4 inch. So to find 8 3/4, you go 8, go to the left, 8 1/4, 8.5, 8 3/4, and I will trim. And then you can rotate. I'll just go this way, I guess, and then take 1/4 inch off the edge. So I'm going to trim at 11 3/4. So 11, 11 1/4, 11.5, 11 3/4. And I'm going to put that. And now this is going to be the inside cover. So this is going to be placed onto the stack with all the other project components. And then I'm left with this strip here. So I'm going to trim this horizontally, and it doesn't really matter which way. We'll cut at 9 3/4, 6.5, and 3 1/4. All right, these 3 pieces here that are square can be set aside in a pile for our bonus layout. In other words, I'm using the back side of our first page as a bonus and the back side of the last page as another bonus. So this gets set aside. You have to have just a little bit of crafting space available for this workshop. And then this final piece, we're going to put that in pocket 3 and 4. Okay, the next print should be the octopus. And I'm going to place this into the trimmer so that the octopus is in the upper left corner. And we'll cut at 8 3/4. And then rotate and cut at 11 3/4. And this piece gets set aside, once again, to become an inside cover of our book. And you should have a small little piece here. I guess you should have the small one from before as well. I don't think I used either of these, so you can set them aside in your scrap pile, which is pretty small, all things considered. Then this next strip, we're gonna trim horizontally at 11, and we'll pop this into pocket 7 and 8. Now, if I'm going too fast for you, you can always adjust your playback speed to 0.75 to slow me down a little bit. This little piece is a scrap. Now, the next time I take this octopus print, I'm gonna put it once again with him in the upper left corner, and we're gonna start out at 11 3/4, and this time down to 8 1/2. Then trim horizontally at 11. And this is used in layout 3 and 4. Your narrow piece here is also used in 3 and 4. And then this piece we're going to place into the trimmer horizontally and cut at 11 1/2, 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, and 2 1/4. These all go in various spots. If we just want to line everything up. There are 3 narrower rectangles and 1 wider one. So the first rectangle goes in 1 and 2. Next one, 5 and 6. Back to 1 and 2 on that one. 3 and 4. And the last wider one, 5 and 6. And you have a little scrap here at the end. Now, if you're wondering, where are you getting all these numbers from, Tricia? They're from the diagram, and the number 3 and 4 is right on that piece, so I just went on down the line and just called out the numbers as I saw them. It's just convenient for you to be able to follow along on video. You don't have to read anything, really. Okay, now, this whale print here again, the whale should be in the left, probably lower corner. Once again, we're going to cut this time at 8 1/2. And we'll rotate so the whale's upside down and cut at 11. Okay, this piece goes in pocket 1 and 2. And the long narrow strip here goes in 7 and 8. And we have this strip here. We'll place this in the trimmer at 10 1/2, 7, and 3 1/2. Gather up the 3 squares that are the same size, and we'll place those in pocket 5 and 6. And then this piece gets trimmed, believe it or not, at 1 3/4. That's a pretty tiny little cut there. You're making 2 rectangles the same size going into pocket 7 and 8. All right, deep blue. The grain direction on this does not matter, so you can place it into your trimmer any old way. And I'm going to trim at 11 1/2 and 11. Then I'm going to rotate and cut at 8 1/2. This goes in pocket 1 and 2. And then you have this strip here. It's 3 1/2 by 11 right now. We'll cut at 10 1/2, 7, and 3 1/2. These 3 pieces of paper go into our pile for our bonus pages. So I have that set aside. I have right now, the only other thing in that pile are 3 squares, and you'll notice that these 3 squares nest on the blue squares. Kind of handy right there. Okay, then you do have a small scrap that's left from that strip, and then you have the 2 long skinny strips. These, I'm going to stack them together as neatly as I can and rest them against the bottom edge of my measuring rule here and cut at 11. All right, these are going to be used in bonus B. So I'm just going to put this on the stack with those other squares so I can sort it out later. And I have 2 tiny scraps you can get rid of. And now the other deep blue. Okay, we're going to take 1/4 of an inch off the edge by trimming at 11 3/4. And then 8 1/2. You see that number a lot when you're making an 8 1/2 by 11 book. Then rotate and cut at 11. That too. All right, this is the base for pocket or for layout 3 and 4. So I'm going to put that in the pocket. And then you have this strip at the end going in 7 and 8. Then you have this 3 1/4 inch strip. Our first cut on this one is 9 3/4. Then 6 1/2, 3 1/4. You made 3 squares and then a narrower rectangle. All of them are used in layout 5 and 6. So I'll put them in those pockets. And then you have this really skinny strip, believe it or not. Let's trim him up at 11. Again, I'm making use of that line below the inch marking here and put that in 5 and 6. This little tiny piece, we're gonna trim horizontal. I'm kidding. We're gonna put this in our scrap pile or throw it away. Okay, now 1 aqua metallic, we will cut at 8 1/2. Rotate, trim at 11 3/4 and 11. This larger piece goes in 7 and 8. And then we have this wider, well, I mean wider with respect to this one. The wider remnant here goes in 1 and 2, and the skinnier guy goes in 3 and 4. And we have the strip, we'll trim at 10. Seven and 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. Just pick everything up and deal it out. So we've got 2 going into pocket 1 and 2, one of them going into pocket 3 and 4, the next one going in 5 and 6, and this one we're going to trim horizontally at 3. And this goes into pocket 3 and 4. Every cut has a purpose. And then this little scrap here we'll add to our little tiny little pile of scraps. And then we have our aqua metallic, our other one. This time we'll start at 11. Rotate, trim at 8 1/2. And you can place this in pockets 7 and 8. Then we have the 3 1/2 by 12 or 11 inch strip. Let's cut that at 8 1/4. This gets integrated into the outside cover. And again, this is personalized more to this collection. So let's just set that aside in your pile with the cover materials. You have this other rectangle. This gets placed in pocket 5 and 6. And then you have the narrow strip that will trim again at 11. I use these for anchoring, border strips and things. All right, this is part of bonus A. So I'm gonna add this to my bonus pile and a tiny little square. That's it for the plain and printed sheets. And now we're gonna be trimming the Cutaparts. Now, I know it's kind of an extra task, but for best results on these Cutaparts, if you notice that little crosshairs in the corner, what I want you to do is line up the edge of the blade with that vertical mark. And we're gonna trim off about 1/8 of an inch from the entire outside edge of the paper. So that little mark's on every single corner. It doesn't really matter what corner you start on. So I'll line that up in there, and that's the best I can. And sometimes I go a little bit shy of the mark. I'm pretty spot on right now, but I like to be able to fine tune that on my final turn around the paper. So that one is gonna have to be cleaned up a little bit more. Now on this edge, I can now see more easily at both the top here at the blade edge and down in the bottom corner to line that up nicely. Another rotation, and I'll line it up again at top and bottom with the blade and the mark. Another rotation here. This time I should be able to see it about 12 inches on this side. And then finally one last little cut to neaten things up here. One of the many things I love about my trimmer is that it's capable of trimming something nice and clean, even at that tiny little size. Then you have, these are just scraps. You can set those into the circular file. And I'm gonna place this back into the trimmer so that we got no troubles, life is bubbles, on the right. Okay, so our first trim here is going to be at 10 3/4. And then 10, just let those pieces pile up, don't move them. 9 1/4, 6 1/2, and 3 1/2. Okay, this wide piece was used with my bonus layout, so I'm going to set that in a separate pile. And then this next strip will trim at, let's see, 8 and 4.5. This strip, use it in 1 and 2. And then this one, bonus, so put it in the bonus pile. And then we can take scissors here and we're going to separate these elements very casually, okay, just so that we can distribute them to the appropriate layout. Let's see, the star, this was used in layout 5 and 6. We'll do the fussy cutting later on. Then the shell, I ended up not using this one, so we can just leave it attached. The shell goes in 1 and 2. And then our 2 little extra bubbles, 3 and 4. Goes right down to the little bubbles. We cover it all. Then this next strip, place it in the trimmer so that the seahorse is on your right. We'll cut it 7.5. This is used on our cover. So we're going to set this with our cover materials. And then this goes in bonus B, so on the bonus pile. Then this strip, 1 and 2. The next strip, 5 and 6. And then this one goes in 3 and 4. Imagine if we didn't have that accordion pocket file there or a system of organizing, this would be a real mess. Okay, now once again, do you see the little marks in the corners? I'm going to start by removing the edges, and you can do that along with me. Put me on pause while you do that, and work your way around the entire sheet. Okay, with this border here now on the right, because I always like to take off the skinniest parts first so that the majority of the paper is on the base of my trimmer here. So I'm going to cut at 10 3/4 this time, 9.5, 7.5, and 4.5. Now rotate. We dream in colors borrowed from the sea, and that we're going to trim here at 9, and 6.5. Now if you want right away, we can clip off these little triangular shapes from the tag shape. So I'm just going to place this right along the edge of my blade, bring the handle down till I'm just barely touching the paper. And I can kind of see, if I close one eye and look at the angle, I can kind of tell I've got a pretty good spot here for this trim to take off the corner. But I'm going to rotate and do that again. Just kind of try to line up the edges to match the margin on the sides. And then this tag can go into pocket 7 and 8. And the 2 little triangles that you created can go in your circular file. Then let's get salty, 7 and 8. We dream in colors. We'll need to do a little corner chomp here. Just kind of line it up and give it a snip. If you want to be even more accurate, maybe you'd want to use like a craft knife and a cutting mat, or you could use scissors. I just find it's easy to do it this way with my trimmer right here. And this goes in pocket 3 and 4. And this strip, here we're going to place it in the trimmer with the words the sea on the left and cut at 9. And then this goes in pocket 1 and 2. Here we got some rough cuts we need to do here. So the turtle is used on bonus B. So set that aside. And then our shell shaped like this, 1 and 2. So this little starfish right here, that goes on the cover. And the nautilus shell is used in bonus A. Wow, okay. Then you have this next strip here. We've got some horizontal journaling block on the right, the starfish on the left. We'll cut at 9, 6, and 3. Nice whole numbers there for you. These 2, the first 2, Eurostar and the vertical journaling prompt, 1 and 2. Then you have another vertical prompt that goes in 3 and 4. And finally, the horizontal journaling prompt, 5 and 6. This strip, smell the sea, 5 and 6. And the last strip is incorporated into our cover. So I can set that aside. And now I can get rid of my trimmer. As you do that, be aware that this is all just sort of being held together and held up by the base of your trimmer. So I support the file while I remove the trimmer, and you can set all of this aside and we'll work on the cover. I also want to mention that this is it for scraps. One of the things that I take great pride in is using all of the materials that we design and ship to you efficiently so that you don't have to deal with the guilt and frustration of storing larger pieces of scrap paper that you may not ever use. This is the most efficient use of your time and your materials. Okay, next I'm going to take one book board and I can place it horizontally on my work surface, and I'm going to take one page protector. And you can center this onto the board, aligned with the left edge and centered from top to bottom. So just make sure that the plastic isn't peeking out beyond the edge of this left side at all, but it's nice and level here. And then take a pencil, and I will mark the location of the top circle, the middle hole, and the bottom hole. Ignore those other two oblong shaped or oval shaped holes. And then you're gonna need some sort of a punch. I'm using a crocodile, which is a commonly owned tool. Otherwise, if you have a Japanese screw punch, you can use that. And I'm just going to line up the largest hole on my crocodile with the hole that I drew with my pencil and remove that little circle out of there. If you're really in a desperate situation and don't even have anything at all that can get through the board, perhaps a scissors tip just to kind of start carving it out, and do your very best to get that circle removed so that you're able to bind this with your rings. Now that I have the 3 holes transferred from the page protector to the cover, I'm going to transfer the same holes now to the other cover just by nesting and tracing, rather than lining it up again. This is going to give me a more reliable, consistent set of holes that are, fully aligned with the protectors. And then punch out those 3 holes as well. We'll be doing a lot of this hole transferring as we work on this cover. And the final hole here. So next I'm going to take my grid ruler and one cover, and I'm going to measure a line 2.5 inches from the left edge, or the punched side of my horizontal cover. Now my ruler here is 3 inches wide, and if I find these bold lines running through, this line is number 1 inch and the 2nd inch. So I'm going to look at aligning this solid, that's 1 inch from the edge. Now I go over, that's 2 inches from the edge. Then halfway, that's 2.5 inches from the edge. Now I realize this is a unique way of measuring for many of you. What you typically do, most likely, is take a ruler and find 2.5 inches and mark it, and then draw the straight line. If you use the ruler correctly though, all you have to do is find the 2.5 inch vertical line, make sure it's flush with the edge of your project, and then draw your pencil line. Much easier, if you can believe it. It takes more time to explain, but once you get the hang of this and use it as a habit, I know my students for years have been kind of getting the hang of it and figuring out how all of that works. So I added a second line, the same distance from the edge, you can see, to the other cover, and again that's 2.5 inches. Next I'm going to have you find the spine pieces. These are 3.5 by 11 in size right now, and we need to do some marks on these as well. So I'm going to now draw a line 1 inch from the edge of the vertical spine. So that's that first big solid line, the most bold line on the ruler. That puts me at 1 inch. And it never hurts to confirm. Indeed, that's 1 inch up from the bottom, from the side edge. I also need to draw one from the bottom too. So I'm gonna go solid line. That's 1 inch right there. So I can make my mark. Repeat for the other piece. So again, 1 inch from the left edge and 1 inch from the bottom edge. If you're working with a textured paper, make sure you're making these marks on the wrong side of the paper or the smooth side. So here I have my 2 spines getting ready to go here. I'm going back to my cover, and this is where you need some bookbinding glue. And I believe we did include this in the kit if you bought the full kit. And otherwise, if you don't have it, this is something that you can always use on numerous projects. And it's a great product. I've been bottling it for years. Now what I'm doing is dispensing some glue onto my cover, but only within the pencil marked area. So again, here's that pencil line I made. The glue is being applied on the punched hole area. And I'm going to take the chisel tip of my brush. Notice how I'm holding my board off of the work surface. If I'm down here, I might get glue on my other parts of my project. I've picked up some glue onto the chisel tip and then run the chisel tip right along the pencil line like so. And try to do that in as few strokes as possible. We don't want to allow the glue to get spread so thin that it dries. And the same thing for the rest of it. Now I need to cover the entire area thoroughly with glue. And it needs to go past, to the edge, all the way to the edge here. Now, if you run out of glue or it starts to get too shiny and dry, you need to add more glue. And part of the process of learning to do this well is to understand how much glue needs to be applied and kind of master that. Now, I always put my brush down on the edge of my table with the foam going off the edge of the table. I know you can't see that, but that keeps the glue off of my project as well. Now here I'm coming in, I've got my spine piece here, glued side facing down, and I can just bring the corner of my board into the corner of my intersecting pencil lines here. Line up the edge with a 1-inch guide and drop it down. Say a little prayer. Pick it up, turn it over. And I'm almost directly on the edge. I'm a little bit off. Not a big deal at all. Looks really good on this side. I'll smooth this out. Now I'm burnishing the paper onto the board. And this is going to be part of the outside cover. Next, I can take a blue piece and just kind of dry fit. And by dry fit, I mean this is going to be placed first without glue to test it. If I line this up nicely with the edge of this paper, notice how the height is the same at the top and the bottom. If I were to rotate this, the height is not the same. So make sure that your cover is going to be placed along this edge with the seam aligned top to bottom. So to prepare this for adhesion, I'm just going to apply glue now to the whole board, kind of working in a swirl to make sure I have enough glue. Again, it's hard if you've never worked with this product before, until you've practiced a little bit, to understand how much glue is necessary, but you will get the hang of it quickly. Now, here, same thing. After picking up some of the glue, I'll run the chisel tip of the brush along the seam. I'm holding this off of my work surface, and then try to imagine you're painting the ceiling of a house. You would not do that in tiny little strokes like this. You would do it in longer strokes so that you would, save time and spread it evenly. With this one hand holding it up, I don't have to worry about getting glue all over my table. And if you find it too difficult to do that, then protect your work surface with some scrap paper, maybe a old magazine or something. Fan that all out. And notice the surface is all nice and shiny and looks like glue, right? Now I can lay this on my work surface, double check to make sure that the top and bottom of each piece is the same size. Now I'm going to do the drag and drop. So I'm going to slide this along the green paper until it clicks down into its final resting place. And then you can drop the rest of the paper down and burnish. And then I get to repeat that with the other cover. So I'll take that spine piece, place it down on my work surface. Remember, I need to apply the glue within the pencil marked area first. Grab your brush and then just go along the pencil line, nice and tight, as cleanly as you can while you hold this off of your work surface. Spread the glue nicely. You don't want anything dripping. That would be a really bad idea. What keeps this so nice and tidy is just that mastery of how much glue to apply. So a reminder, be patient with yourself till you get the hang of it. Face down now with the glued side here, going into that intersecting pencil line on the spine. Lay it down get it lined up, and then drop. And then flip. Oh, it's looking really good. Okay, then remember the next step is just to cover the rest of the board with our glue. Okay, now I'm going to slide this along and brush outward. Take the other book cover, double check your height, make sure it matches, slide, and it just sort of drops in. Burnish the whole thing, make sure there's no air in there. And now, while I'm thinking of it, we do have a cut apart sort of planned for my cover. So I'm gonna just decide which one is gonna be my front cover. They both turned out great. If you have one that's less attractive than the other, you can cover anything with this piece. I'm gonna go ahead and trim this to 11 inches so it fits my book. And then I'm going to apply some glue to this as well. It is a little harder with something like this to hold it in your hand and keep it off your work surface. So if you want to grab some scrap paper, I'm just going to rely on some of my experience to support this underneath the paper. And again, this is an optional step. If you don't want to, decorate your cover right out of the gates, you certainly don't have to. I just found that for this, it's kind of nice to have it all worked into the cover nice and beautifully. So there we go. Let's line this up with the seam. Okay, at this point we need to remember where our holes are for our cover. So if you happen to have like a pointy tipped scissors, I'm going to just pierce through those 3 holes that we made earlier in both of our covers. So you're going to hear me say this a lot. Repeat for the other cover. Now that I have the hole, I can take something a little nicer looking like my bone folder and just sort of push the paper from the right side of the cover down into the hole. Perfect. Repeat for the other cover, which again, you're going to hear me say that a lot. Okay. Looking good. Now we need to figure out what to do with all this excess paper to give us a nice looking cover. And what needs to happen is we need to create 4 flaps by trimming away a triangular shape from the tip of each corner. Now here's the most important thing. When you trim this corner at an angle, you have to be certain to leave at least 1/8 of an inch of paper extending beyond the tip of the board. The reason for that is that the board is 1/8 of an inch, and if I cut right to the corner, I won't have any paper that I can use to cover that corner, and you'll have a naked corner. So I'm leaving at least 1/8 of an inch. And some people like to do this, like where our ruler itself, if you have our grid ruler, you have the tool that you need. And if you don't have the grid ruler, pick one up. I'm gonna make a line on the outside of the ruler after standing it up against the corner, perpendicular to the table. That line is 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the corner because the ruler is 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to cut on the outside of that line to make sure I have plenty, or once you get enough experience, you can just eyeball that and you'll be fine. So I'm removing these corners, and what that's going to do is create a flap then, 4 flaps. And of course, we are making 2 covers here, my friends, so you got to do that twice. So removing 8 corners, 4 from each cover, leaving that paper extending beyond the tip, and you can get rid of all those little triangles. Next, we need to prepare the flaps for wrapping themselves around the cover. So to do that, I'm going to use a bone folder, and I'm going to run it under the paper flap so that it's making contact with the board. Then I'm going to turn it so it's making that full 90-degree turn again and wrapping itself around the board nicely. So again, I'm going under to turn it upwards, and then over the top to wrap it around. So work your way around the entire book cover, doing that same thing. You're making nice creases all the way around. Beautiful. And guess what we get to do? Repeat for the other cover. I can take my glue bottle, and also keeping in mind that I have quite a bit of glue in the tip of my brush as well. I'm going to add a little glue to one of the long flaps, and holding it off of my work surface, I am fanning my glue brush out to the outside edges of the flaps. This is like a double flap here with this contrasting color, which is what we want. Now that it's covered in glue and I have a nice thin layer of glue brushed onto the flap, I can wrap it around and it stays put the minute I lay it down on the inside. So that long edge is wrapped. If you want, you can take your bone folder and just burnish it a little bit. Now I'm gonna go to the opposite side, and that's important, and I'll apply the glue to the other flap. Just add a little bit. Notice when I'm applying glue, I'm not adding it near the corner of anything because that can cause the glue to ooze out a little bit off of my work surface. Just always want to remind you of that. It's so important. And bring those flaps up and around. Now before you wrap those shorter flaps, an important step here, make sure you tuck in all of the excess paper at that corner. You can use your fingertips or you can use the tip of a bone folder to kind of turn that in. And then you just make a test. So if I wrap this around now and I look at the corner, how is that gonna look? It's gonna look professional. So I can add a little bit of glue here again onto this short flap. I do the long flaps first just to get them out of the way. They're bigger, they're more time consuming. The short flaps is kind of like my little reward for working hard on those long flaps. Plus I get the satisfaction of forming that beautiful corner. And once you master this skill, it's yours to keep forever. You know how to do it, and you're gonna always make beautiful books of any size that you can possibly imagine. Rotating out of the other side, I'm just gonna use my fingertips here to tuck that in. Take it for a test run. It's looking beautiful. So now I can add my adhesive. Holding it off my work surface, I'll brush to the edge and wrap that. You'll need to repeat that for the other cover. So again, a reminder, start out with those long flaps first and do both the top and the bottom. Now I've got my long flaps. I'll turn these in. Apply the glue. Boy, I'm really running out. I like to finish off the one glue bottle before I open another one, so that's just what we're doing. I store the bottle on its side as I'm working. Okay, this goes around. Give it a little burnish. Oh, that's so nice looking. Tuck in my corners at the end here. A little dab, glue. That's looking beautiful. Now, if the cover is warped a little bit, it's simply the moisture from the glue, and that will flatten out again as the glue dries, which is awesome. Now, I can't see my holes anymore, so this time I'm going to go from the front of the cover with my pointed tipped scissors. If you happen to have like a paper piercing tool or an awl, you can pierce and then kind of smooth the paper down into the hole. We only have to do this one more time with the, once we add our inside cover to finish the covers themselves. So we only have really one more step here to finish these covers beautifully, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. Now, I've been mentioning all day about the importance of keeping something off of your work surface, but this is a pretty big sheet of paper. We need to apply glue to the back of the entire thing, and we also need to just decide what's what on our covers here. So this is going to be my front cover, so I'm going to decide that I want the whale to be covering the inside cover like this, so that when you open the front of the book, you see this. And then this is going to be the back cover, right? And this time I want the octopus to be down in the corner here of my back cover. So I need to make sure that I maintain that orientation while I am preparing everything. Now, to protect my work surface, I'm going to use a grid pad paper that I have at Club Scrap. You could also use any kind of other paper, but this is wide enough to help me protect the whole thing while I'm gluing. And I'm really out, so I'm gonna have to grab a new bottle of glue, which I have sitting right here. Your bottle is likely full. So I added some glue and I'm going to fan to the outside edges. thoroughly. You want to make sure especially that the outer perimeter of your paper has a thorough application of glue. Notice with my left hand, I'm just sort of holding it down in one place. And once I have to go fill that area with glue, I'll just move my fingertips to support the paper. I want to make sure those edges are covered. The whole thing's shiny. I see a little error here. I'm gonna cover that. Bring in my cover, make sure this is right side up. And we center this. The margin will be about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And right away come in with my bone folder. Smooth out anything causing problems, and you've got a nice looking wrapped cover. Isn't that great? We'll let that dry before we transfer our whole location. And now I'm going to take my graph paper again and fold it in half to give myself a fresh new spot. I'm going to add just a little more glue this time. I'm not happy with how much glue I had on that last run. Again, I'll work kind of from the center out to the outer edges. This time, a little more glue. You don't want it dripping ever. You just kind of want a nice thorough coat, but it takes practice, again, to understand how much is required in order for the project to turn out the way you want. So I'm gonna set this aside again, bring in my cover, make sure this is right side up, and I'm gonna align here at the bottom, I think. See how quickly that glue dries? It's just amazing. So nice. Now I'm going to take this cover again, which I did just a second ago, and find once again the whole location. Pierce through. And from the other side, I will bring that paper down into the hole. And you know the drill. Repeat for the other side. Those are my beautiful covers. I am so pleased. And just remember, your orientation will matter so that when this opens, you want the graphics. If you're using a print that has, you know, a up and a down or a top and a bottom, that'll be important. Now in the kit, you have some other embellishments, but basically to finish your cover, you will take just your standard adhesive. You could use bookbinding glue as well, but if you wanted to. And I want to make sure that this is nicely centered onto here. So I think the margin's going to be 3/8 of an inch. Use my ruler to sort of find 3 cubes from the edge of the paper, top, bottom, and left, and that'll add this beautifully. Then you also have a little starfish here. And in your kit, again, if you're using the Under the Sea kit, you have a set of these really sweet little metal bezels and some epoxy stickers. So if I take scissors, and a punch probably won't be quite the right size for this. It's kind of a unique number of millimeters that this is required. And I'm just gonna eyeball the best circle cut I can make with the scissors. Now I have another little applicator that I use, this little mini glue applicator bottle. I do use this quite a bit, and I fill it with bookbinding glue. I also need to fill this. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to this and then drop in the starfish element, and just it sort of snaps into place beautifully. So if there were any errors in your cutting, you won't be able to see them. Then I'll take the glue again, and I'm going to run it around the perimeter of the piece. Then take the epoxy sticker, and it should lay right in there perfectly. Oh, that's so nice. I love it. There we go. You should hear it snap. You can take some of the thread that's in this kit, and let's say I want it to be somewhere around there. Cut enough so I can make a loop of thread and send it through that hanging loop here on the bezel. and attach it kind of like you would a loop on a luggage tag. Just run it through the circle. There we go, we have our top attached. And then I need enough going down here at the bottom. Make another loop. Bring the loop through that hole. Bring the ends through the loop and pull. At this point, I can add a little bit of just traditional two-way dry adhesive to my bezel. And I'm going to add that kind of where I want it to sit. With that attached, I can take my thread tails here. Oh, this is going to be such a great embellishment. I can split them up a little bit, bring them around to the back, and I'm just going to place these with some cellophane. You could also use washi tape, some kind of a tape, so that you can hold them in place where you want them. I'll do the same thing here. Bring it around to the back. Secure with the tape. I am going to trim some tails here, and then I'll add adhesive to the whole thing. Again, this is, I'm using an ATG tape applicator, adhesive transfer gun, and I'll place this right into its rightful home on my beautiful book cover. And then now we can go over what goes onto the pages. Also in your kit, you have some pre-cut photo mats. These are trimmed to 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. Now, if you're working with a special edition Club Scrap kit, we do not provide you with these pre-cut mats, but we do give you 4 additional sheets of paper, and I have a diagram right in the instructions to help you trim those extra sheets of paper into the perfect photo mat shape. And that sketch can be found, let's see, found on page 4, right here at the bottom, the bonus sketch. So that's to recreate these mats. Now, if you go to the last page of your instructions, it shows all of the layouts that we'll make with the pieces we trimmed earlier. And we have the photo mats that can be distributed to our files. So let's take the white photo mats. The first 2, 1 and 2, go in pocket 1 and 2. And then this white one, the remaining white one, goes with our bonus pages. For the sea green, we're going to take 2 of them and put them in pocket 3 and 4. And the other one in 7 and 8. On the deep blue, one of them goes in pocket 3 and 4, and the other 2 go in 7 and 8. I just love how this all comes together. Finally, we have the aqua. One of them goes with bonus page, and the other 2, 5 and 6. Okay, now everything needed for all the layouts is in the folder in the appropriate pocket, and the picture we're going to follow to assemble those layouts is right here in front of us. Now, I think what we'll do is start out with layouts 7 and 8, and then work our way up to layout 1 and 2, and then we can kind of look at the bonus situation. So let's take everything out of pocket 7 and 8. Let's take the 2 papers, the 2 base papers, and lay them side by side on our work surface. And then I'm looking at the image in the instructions labeled 7 and 8, and everything else that came in the pocket should be what's needed to complete this. Let's see, we've got this paper running across the top. I'm going to ignore ribbon for now. Those are just finishing touches you will add. I've got this border strip here. I have a sea green photo mat horizontally, a deep blue vertically, deep blue horizontally. Oh, this guy, he goes across the top here to anchor this a little. Nice. This quote goes right here. Oh, this piece with a little turtle, he gets slipped in along the right edge, kind of framing things in nicely. This large tag here, and 2 small little pieces go down over here. There you have a layout. I love it. Okay, now this whole thing is going to go to the right. Then I'm going to take pocket 5 and 6 and take everything out. And now I'm going to lay the base, take one of these sea green base papers, lay it on top of layout 7. And then the other one I'm going to lay next to it. Okay, now let's get our strips distributed. We got one border strip going across here that I need to trim to 11 inches because they all started out at 12. Same for this strip up here, needs to be trimmed down. We can do that easily when we do our adhesive. Then we have the blue strip sort of anchoring it down in there. And a horizontal aqua photo mat here. Notice I'm distributing all of the pieces from my hand. It's a little easier, can be anyway. Now I have 3 prints going across the top here and 3 nestables. Oh, that looks so pretty. This, come to find out, goes behind my long border strip here. Nest that wider piece behind your border strip here. Well, everything just fits together so nicely. From the metallic aqua, you're going to want to take there are 2 different sizes. A larger one goes on top, and then we should have something that we can nest onto the smaller one along with that journaling prompt horizontally. This other piece goes on over here, and then once you trim out, you can just fussy cut this a little further, trim out your starfish. He's going to embellish the image right over here. So that's really it for pages 5 and 6. So I'm going to slide this page 5 on top of 6, and then I can take out the materials from pocket 3 and 4. We'll start out with just the large pieces, and the octopus is going to go on the right, and then the other one will go on the left. So again, this is the base for 3 and 4, so I can take everything out of those pockets. So let's start out with this decorative piece is going to be placed vertically on the left edge of this page. And then next to it, we have this narrow strip just to add some color. Across the top, you're going to have a wider aqua strip, and you'll need to trim this down to 11 inches, which is super easy to do. Then add 2 vertical sea green pieces and a horizontal blue. We've got our tag. We have this smaller rectangle nesting onto the print. And then I think we have something triple nesting right here. So check that out. The journaling prompt gets 2 buddies, and then 2 of these tiny little circles were added to the bubbles here on the left. And that's all there is to that one. Look at that. And then finally, we are arriving at pages 1 and 2. We still have our bonus papers. So we're just doing what we call the dry fit phase here. We won't do any adhesive until we have everything placed and figured out. So here we have our whale on the left and our dark blue on the right, and this really beautiful wide border strip right here. And it looks like I've nested that with some blue and maybe some ribbon as well. A horizontal white mat here and a vertical white here, unfortunately covering that sweet little whale's face, but we can fix that. It looks like this yellow piece needs to be trimmed down to 8.5 inches, and I didn't do it at the time because one of the pieces from that set was used as an 11-inch piece, so that just gets trimmed and nested with the aqua metallic. The long border strip has a companion, and again, you'll need to just trim the strip down to 11 if you want to do that with scissors or with a trimmer. That's up to you. And that's going to anchor things on this left page. You'll have 2 metallic vertical pieces nested with 2 prints, and you'll get a decorative element and a journaling prompt going with them. This will go on the left with our trimmed out shell, and then we're using the epoxy sticker with the circle right on over here with that shell. And that's going to be officially 1 and 2. Now, the back side of layout 1 gets some of these pieces, and the back side of layout 8 gets the others. So once those layouts are all added together, everything from your bonus layout pile can be incorporated into page 1 and 2. Let's take another quick peek at the finished album. So once you open the cover, here is layout 1, and all those pieces are in this extra bonus stack. And again, this is the back side of the first page. So that's your bonus A. Then here we have layouts 1 and 2, and you can see how I've incorporated our little stingray, and then a ribbon here. We've got some ribbon stapled to the tops of these tags, as well as a puffy starfish, and then there's our epoxy charm here. It's pretty basic embellishing done at this point. Another, some ribbon attached to the top of the tag and wrapped around to the back of the layout. Then we have our starfish. On this side, you can see the silver charm and some ribbon loops here. And then this would be 7 and 8. Again, a hole punched in the top of this tag. It's kind of glary, but then you've got your little starfish. Again, here's your charm, more ribbon on the top of that tag. And then the very last layout using the Cutaparts turtle and the jellyfish here on the lower right corner of that tag. Once you have your pages finished, you can install everything clearly. I mean, that's simple. Just thread those rings, and they just open very easily. Thread those rings through the album cover, add your page protectors after sliding in your pages, keeping in mind that the pages slide in from the inner edges. So it's really nice how secure these pages are in the book. It can suffer a lot of wear and tear, you know, the little kids looking through them repeatedly, and this is going to hold up very, very nice. So again, that is the Easy 8 album. Hopefully we've made it easy for you. And just be mindful that you can take other collections, other Club Scrap page kits, and create additional books using that same basic template. In this case, again, I allowed the materials that I had, the Cutaparts and so on, to help me choose how to finish all of these pieces. If you just follow the basic trimming instructions and add the Cutaparts at the end, you will be just fine and create a lot of different albums that are custom to your desires using those new skills you picked up in the workshop today. Hope you learned a lot. And speaking of workshops, I offer a page kit and card kit workshop at Club Scrap here every single month. And we'll make 8 pages together using this type of method, and we'll make 12 cards each month together typically, and I walk you through the trimming, scoring, sorting, and assembly of those cards with you as well. So I hope you consider joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in class again soon. Have a great one.